Welcome to Advertising Design and Branding. We are going to do our last section of Photoshop today. So before we actually get into the lecture part, I'm going to show you a few more things in Photoshop. So I am going to change the share and share my Photoshop with you guys. So there's nothing for you to download. You can just watch and see what we're going to do. So I'm going to open up uh, my particular class files here. You're getting to see all this stuff. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to automate, straighten, and crop. So I'm going to open that up. And you can see that I've got a whole bunch of photographs in the same file. And this used to be a real big problem. People would scan a whole bunch of photographs in one scan instead of scanning each one of them separate. So it really kind of made a mess for trying to clean them up and get them straightened and stuff. Photoshop has got this handy thing that you can take and do this in an automated way. So I'm going to go to crop and straighten. And there, it's done. I'm going to use this little arrow here to show you how many photographs I have now, how many files. Here's the original, and then it made 5 copies. And you can go through and see each one of them. They're kind of tiny, but at least they're separate files. I don't have to open up a file for this. I can just go straight to the Automate section and go to Photo Merge. There we go. So this is a different kind of file than all the others, a different kind of process than all the others because um, we are going to place the files after we've opened up. So I'm going to browse to where my files are, and it just so happens that here they all are. I'm going to just select them all, and they pop into this little window here. So I am going to just leave it with the automatic section here because I don't really know which one of these would work best. It would probably make my photograph look pretty funny because it was pretty well straight across. And I know that you can do this with your iPhone. I do it with my iPhone too. But the reason that I'm showing you this is if you need in the future to maybe make a series of photographs um, big enough to be on the side of a barn or the side of, the side of a big, huge building or something, your your camera in your phone may not have the quality that you're going to need. So this way you can use a really high quality camera and take separate photographs and have Photoshop stitch it together. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to leave this with automatic. I'm going to blend them together. I'm going to remove the vignette. I'm going to also ask it to correct this distortion and fill the areas with content aware. All right, so now I'm just going to say, okay. And this is a fast process. Okay, it's done. That was pretty fast. Now, I do have a really fast computer, I have to say, but it's not it's not something that takes a really long time. So I'm going to deselect that. And so this file on the very top in our layers, this layer is everything put together because it says it's merged. So I can turn this off and you can see where it had to fill in, where it wasn't quite big enough to have the whole page covered. Okay, so I'm going to turn off one of these and you'll be able to see how it just stitches everything together. It just goes in and decides where the best break is and fill it in. Pretty good job. Okay, so that was really fun. Be sure to keep that in your back pocket so that you know that Photoshop can stitch together the most beautiful photo montage that you've ever seen. Your camera in your phone does a pretty good job for small things, but for really big projects, you can't beat Photoshop. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our project for today. So now I'm going to talk about montages. I've showed you some examples, from what we did in the lab, the last lab was sort of some examples of montages. They were a little bit simple, but they can be very complex. They can have messages. These are just some fine art ones that I found. And so this is actually considered a fine art, and you can use it in advertising to get across a message to really bring a lot of interest to the ad that it's connected with. Here, you take unusual things and put them together, like making the eggs bigger than the chicken. That's that's pretty eye-catching. And here, a cat eating the road. Yes, I do love cats. That's why I had to add that one in there. That is not my photograph. Here's a really simple one. It only has two objects, but it really says a lot. They have their head in the clouds. Here's one that's very complex, and it's using more than just photographs, but it is using photographs quite a lot. They're using graphics and words and everything, which is perfectly okay for this project for you. And here is another eye-catching one. Literally, sorry, don't mean to be having a pun, but peeking into an eyeball like that. So you can take objects that will never happen in real life and put them together in Photoshop. And here we've got an unusual pairing of fruit. And again, something kind of odd. You don't see that every day. And here's one of my favorites. And Texas Tech has this kind of arch all over the place. You could so easy do that. Okay, so here is the lab. What I want you to do is I want you to create your own montage in Photoshop with your photographs. You can use the photographs out of your phone. Be sure that you're not using photographs of somebody that it might make them angry or something. But, if it's a friend, or you can use yourself. So what I want you to do is I want you to choose a background, one that's going to be solid in the back. It can be a landscape, it can be inside, it can be a textured background. It doesn't have to be of a particular landscape. So I want you to choose your objects, and here are the required elements. So background, you need to have one. So I want you to choose some objects like people, furniture, bicycles, spaceships, whatever you want to put into your montage. And I want you to have two or more, but I wouldn't have a whole lot of those. You need to be mindful of not getting too much stuff in there. Um, but you do need to have a central figure. So you can have like a really big main object and a small main object. So, or a bunch of small objects in a main object. Anyway, that's up to you. But the central figure that you want to draw attention to should be bigger than the others. And then you can have four or more secondary objects. And those secondary objects should be interesting and adding to the story because you're telling a story. So, what I want you to turn in is your final montage saved as a PNG. That means that when you make it a PNG, you're going to have to go to your layers and choose. There's a little lined pull down menu bar. You're going to need to choose flatten layers. Save your, let me back up. Save your layers, save your file as a, a PDS. Okay, here's what we need to turn in. First of all, you're going to be working in layers, so save that file with all the layers intact. And it's going to be, you can save it as a TIFF, you can save it as a PSD, which is the native file for the Photoshop program. And then when you've got your one saved, then save another, a second file as a PNG. And you'll need to flatten your file, which you go up to those three little lines at the top of layers and choose flatten image and choose that, and then you can save it as a PNG. You need to name that PNG with your last name underscore montage. And then I also want you to include your original photographs before the photograph that you used before you put them into your montage. So put all of this into a folder. Now you don't have to put your layered file in, just your PNG. So you put them all in a folder, zip the folder, and then upload the zipped folder to Canvas. And this is due by Sunday. All right. If you have any questions, please let me know. Text me. Next, we're going to do Illustrator.